Transnational corporations, I think that the chapter first gives definition. And first thing I think you need to look at is in terms of definition, and as part of definition, this textbook gives two rankings, two kinds of rankings. There are two kinds of rankings, right? Rankings by the UN organization UNCTAD, right? UNCTAD rankings of TNCs, and Financial Times rankings, right? In terms of from big to small TNCs, and you need to figure out how these two rankings are different. Okay, that's the first thing you need to look at in this chapter. UNCTAD rankings of TNCs. What's the measure of UNCTAD rankings of TNC? This textbook argues that which is better, UNCTAD rankings better or Financial Times, TNC 500, right? Global Corporations 500, that's Financial Times rankings. Which is better measure of TNCs according to this chapter? UNCTAD measure rankings are better rankings than Financial Times rankings, because Financial Times rankings do not give the foreign investment activities of TNCs. Okay. In other words, UNCTAD rankings is based on value of foreign assets. Okay, UNCTAD rankings is based on value of foreign rankings. In other words, in contrast, Financial Times rankings based on pure values of shares in the stock market, on the stock market, right? So Financial Times rankings do not look at foreign investment activities, right? So in other words, Financial Times rankings do not measure transnational activities, right? So in that sense, UNCTAD measures better measures of TNCs. Now, two examples of TNCs, Microsoft, Walmart, right? Microsoft and Walmart, those are two big companies, right? Question here, which company is much more engaged in foreign investment? Is it Walmart, Microsoft? Is Microsoft engaged in foreign investment? Or Microsoft is engaged in partnership, not investing abroad, right? Microsoft is not engaged in FDI, right? So it's not a TNC in the true sense of the word, right? In contrast, Walmart is engaged in transnational activities, FDI, right? So Microsoft, in that sense, doesn't appear in the UNCTAD rankings, right? So UNCTAD rankings are better measures. Okay, this is the first, I think, the point I'm trying to make. Okay, UNCTAD rankings, Financial Times rankings. Okay, how they differently measure TNCs, transnational corporations. That's the first thing you need to look at. Second thing, again, question. Transnational corporations in terms of activities, in terms of foreign direct investment, is it on the rise or on the decline recently? Is it TNC activities, is it on the rise or on the decline? The recent trend of transnational corporations. It's on the rise. Okay, the recent rise of. What are the three reasons behind the rise of TNCs? If TNCs rise, what are the three big reasons behind the rise of TNCs? There are three reasons. One is policy liberalization. And second, technological advancement. And increasing competition. So those are three big reasons behind why transnational corporations are increasing and why FDI is increasing due to these three reasons. Now, then number three, FDI flows. Okay, flows of foreign direct investment. Two important patterns of FDI. Two important patterns. Again, question. Does FDI flow from the rich countries to poor countries? Is it correct or incorrect? What's the main pattern of FDI flows? Number one, from north to north. Number two, from north to south. From south to south. What is correct? In other words, foreign direct investment. Where does it begin? Where does it, end? That's the question. The correct answer is most of the foreign direct investment comes out of rich countries, okay, and end up with rich countries, okay, not in developing countries. So, major pattern of FDI flow is from north to north, okay, not from north to south. 85% of global FDI begins with rich countries, 85%. But the more recent trend, more FDI tends to come out of southern developing countries. That's more recent trend. But the major share of FDI comes out of rich countries still, 85%. Right? And major destination, rich countries. That's number one pattern. In conjunction with this, again, what's the biggest destination for FDI? A, the US. B, Korea. C, EU. That's EU. EU is the biggest destination, bigger destination for the United States.
The FBI?
Yes, destination. So EU 43%. 43%. Now, second pattern of FDI flows. FDI flows still regionally bound, that's second pattern. In other words, FDI comes out of the EU, then remain within the EU rather than, right, go out of the EU. Still regionally based, that's the second pattern. This is the most important points or figures. Then number 4. The next kind of segment, next section, like asks questions about when TNCs like go abroad and do business, right? What motivates? Why TNCs go abroad and do business, right? In foreign countries. That's the next question. What are the motivations for TNCs going abroad doing business rather than remaining in their home country? There are several theories, citing some authors. There are some theories behind TNC activities. Number 1 theory is so-called product cycle theory. That's number 1 theory in terms of why TNCs go abroad and doing business. Product cycle theory. So you read about this section, okay, about product cycle theory. Raymond von On, the scholar who invented this theory, product cycle theory. Again, the whole point about, why TNC is going abroad, the whole point about this is that TNCs can do the same thing without going abroad, right? Like a partnering with local partners, right? Instead of going really moving money, moving facilities, right? Then there are reasons why they go there physically, right? So product cycle theory, that's number 1 theory. Second theory is appropriatability theory. That's the second theory. In other words, physically going is better than partnership and licensing agreement because their licenses, technologies can be appropriated, right? Appropriated by local companies. That's appropriatability theory, right? To protect the technology, right? That's third theory, the second theory. And another reason why TNCs go abroad, another reason is currency instability. Currency instability. TNCs are very vulnerable to, right, currency appreciation, foreign exchanges, movement of foreign exchanges, right? So you read some details about all this. Then, the next section on TNC's imperialism, just forget about all this. The stupid pages. Hegemony, TNC's hegemony, great scholar of Marxism. This is really stupid parts. Just skip all this. Go all the way to page 456. Go all the way to 456. There's a section on FDI regime. This is an important section. Global governance of FDI. Skip from 451 to 56. Right, then turn to global governance of FDI. The norms and rules that govern foreign direct investment. The most important rules regarding foreign direct investment is something called MAI, Multilateral Agreement on Investment. MAI. This is single most important rules that govern FDI. Did WTO push for this? No. Right? Interestingly, OECD pushed for this rule, multilateral agreement on investment. Did MAI succeed or fail? Fail. Right? It failed to be approved, right, through some institutions. Right? The whole point about MAI is to treat TNCs as national companies. Same treatment, right? Same treatment as national companies, right? Once TNCs are settled within territorial boundary, they are treated as same, right? The same as national companies in terms of, right, many, right, privileges, taxes, and many rules and obligations. Local companies, TNCs must be treated same. That's the whole point about MAI. In reality, right, the reason why this, MAI didn't succeed is that there was opposition from many countries, including the EU, right? Good example is the EU. It shows how the EU was against some of these, right, national treatment kind of idea against U.S. companies, right, TNCs. Then, right, the last page is, the OECD's attempt to, right, negotiate on MAI. I mean, the process of, how that failed. I mean, that is discussed. Then conclusion. That's it. That's it for this chapter. Now then, let's go back to the development chapter. Then I'm going to go over some of the main things that you need to remember. Chapter 11. Chapter 11, development. I have written up all the questions, so I know what must be emphasized. The questions are there already. First, I think that we need to understand the definition of development. Okay, definition of development. There are three kind of things that have impact on development and underdevelopment, right? Like a period of colonialism, right, that have an impact on development, and the Cold War period. The colonial period, the Cold War period, and the economic success of the developed countries. Those three things have an impact on the experience for developing countries. Okay, next thing, dependency theory. Dependency theory. Dependency theory originated, most active, most developed in Latin America, right? And the focal point of dependence theory is the LDC's role as what producer? Producers of, right, primary products and raw materials. Okay. And 1970s, the decade of 1970s, the importance of 1970. What happened in the 1970s? Right. What is G77? G77. NIEO. What is NIEO? NIEO was convened. Then they called for some actions, right? What are the things that NIEO called for? There's a list of, right? There's a list of actions that NIEO was calling for. Most of these actions NIEO was calling for center around, right, the role of raw materials, right? Raw materials. Now, then developing countries enter neoliberal period, right? Neoliberal period. Then structural adjustment program. What are typical, right, policy packages of structural adjustment program, SAP, right? Like devaluing currency, raising interest rates, right? Cut social welfare program, things like that. Then page 304, table 2. 304, page 2, table 2. You might want to look at this table. There are 4 development strategies are provided. 4 development strategies are provided, right, for developing countries. Liberal strategy, structural strategy, mercantilist strategy, and self-reliance strategy. All have different goals and tools, policy tools. So you might want to look at this. Like for instance, if you take structural development strategy, downside to structural development strategy is slow economic growth rate. Slow economic growth rate. Now, then page 306, inside the liberal strategy, liberal development strategy, the key scholar for liberal development strategy is W.W. Rostow. W.W. Rostow. Right? W.W. Rostow. His development theory presents, right, different stages of economic development. Takeoff stage, right, blah, blah, blah. Then structural development theory. If you take structural development theory, you have most popular kind of policy tool is ISI, import substitution industrialization. ISI. And if you take mercantilist development strategy, best example is export-led growth. Export-led growth. And this export-led growth of East Asian development model, there are several things that are attached to this, right? Savings, right? Savings and foreign capital, right? Education. And state, the government role. The government role. Okay. Now, then EU. EU. There's a PowerPoint, PPT uploaded. So look at the PPT. New regionalism. What is new regionalism? New regionalism is kind of a bottom-up type of regional initiative, bottom-up, like a civil movement. It's not top-down style, the government-led regional movement. It's an NGO-led or civil society-led type of regional integration moves. That's new regional. This is a more recent trend. And some conceptual framework of economic integration. We need to first understand conceptual framework of economic integration. When we talk about economic integration follows some stages, right? In terms of deepening, there are some steps. And these steps, from easy to difficult, the easiest one, FTA, customs union, then economic union. The three-step integration. This is how EU developed. So this conceptual framework first. Then we get to how EU, as an economic union today, how the EU evolved from earlier history to the current. The initial motivation for the EU was economic benefits rather than political benefits. So it was a functional, right, rather than political integration in the very beginning. So the first institution was EEC. EEC 6, right? That's stage 1. EEC 6. EEC 6. And like I said, EEC 6 was driven by mostly economic benefits. EEC 6. Then the UK was out of it, right? The UK was outside the EU. Then second stage, EC. EC 1967, that's second stage. EC 15, right? EEC 6, then second stage, EEC 15. EEC 15. Then how 6 became 15, right? Then the UK added, Spain, Portugal added over time, right? Then become 15. This is stage 2, EC 15. In the meantime, EC suffered some fatigue, right? So EC was facing some dilemma, right? Then Jacques Delors, SEA, Single European Act, right, pushed further, right? Then EC reached a new momentum, right? That's SEA. SEA was about 4 freedoms. What are these 4 freedoms? What are these 4 freedoms? And this is stage 2. Stage 3. What is stage 3? Stage 3 comes when Germany is reunified. That's stage 3. When Soviet Union collapsed, when Germany is reunified, right? Germany is reunified. Then new momentum for European integration. What's the most important treaty at this stage? Stage 3, Treaty of Maastricht. Treaty of Maastricht. So stage 3, for the first time, evolve in 2 parallels. Economic integration on one hand, political integration at the same time. So these 2, right, kinds of integration go in parallel from stage 3 after Maastricht Treaty. Economic integration, what is more important? I mean, economic integration has many different aspects, but currency integration more important in this stage. So euro appears. Right? Not just market integration, but currency integration. Euro is the focus here. And political integration. What is important about political integration? Political integration, you have two dimensions. One is foreign policy. Foreign policy. Second is justice and home affairs. Justice and home affairs. So in total, if you combine both economic, political integration, this textbook says there are three pillars. Pillar one, single market. Pillar two, foreign policy. Pillar three, justice and home affairs. So there are three pillars. There are three pillars. This is stage three. Stage three. Stage four. What is stage four about? Stage four is about up until stage three. Stage 1 to 3 is about deepening. Deepening. Stage 4 is about widening. Membership widening, membership expansion. So stage 4, 15 becomes 27. This is widening. Mostly former Eastern European countries. So 12 new members are added. Okay, this is the evolution of the European Union. Then final, political institutions. Organization of the EU, structure like European Council, right? European Parliament, European Commission. That's something you need to remember. Then Middle East. Middle East. First, overview of Middle Eastern and North African countries. Overview. There are 4 different categories, right? You need to remember that. 4 different categories of MENA countries. Then there are 3 is it 3 or 4? Roots of conflict and cooperation. Just look at the slides. Just follow the slides, okay? I don't remember. Follow the slides about this chapter. Right, follow the slides. Then resource curse. Resource curse. Definition of it. Then second, how to escape it. These two things about the resource curse. One last thing, the period 73-84. Period 73-84, high oil prices. High oil prices. 73 to 84, high oil prices. 85, 98, low oil prices. Stable oil prices. Right, 99, 2008, again high oil prices. So you need to remember this cycle. Rentier state. Rentier state. Rentier state. Then today's chapter, right? TNC. TNC, Not very much. Right? Two different TNC rankings, UNCTAD rankings, Financial Times rankings. Right? What do they measure? UNCTAD rankings measure foreign assets. Foreign assets. Financial Times just shares, value of shares. So Walmart is closer to the real definition of TNC rather than Microsoft. I think this is about exam. China, which is essay. Will China rise as a great power? In writing an essay about this question, will China rise as a great power? Right? In answering this question, there are many different ways of answering this question. But if I were you, number one, I think that in answering this question, there are several important things you need to take into consideration in terms of the rise of China. Right? Number one, I think that there are several potential obstacles to the rise of China. Number one is democracy. Democracy. So in writing an essay, you need to argue China will face some democratic challenges regarding political development. So one of the dilemmas facing China is so far I think economic development in China based on push for economic development, holding political development. That's Chinese strategy. Right? But according to Western theory, a certain level of economic achievement is done. Right? Political demands will grow. Right? So when political demands grow, the simultaneous achievement of both economic political development will be highly problematic. So China cannot escape from this dilemma in the future. Right? So you need to make an argument, regarding these kind of issues. Okay, so development of democracy in China. China is still one-party state, right? How could advanced country, rich country can have only one party, right? Which is a fake political system. How long could China sustain this fake political system while having a growing economy? This is a real dilemma facing China, right? But to pursue political development, you need to come down on economic goals. That's the dilemma. You cannot have it both ways. According to Western theory, you cannot have it both ways. Particularly at the development stage, right? You cannot have it both ways. Right? So far, I think China has been successful because China suppressed political side, right? But now it's about time to tackle political challenges. Right? So you need to bring in these issues in terms of the rise of China. China becoming a great power. So democracy issue, that's the number one issue. Second issue, I think, is that energy. energy and environment. That's second issue. Again, Chinese economic development, I think, has been based on dictatorship, right? But at the same time, Chinese economic development has so far been based on a dirty kind of economic development, right? They put economic development first, right, ahead of environment, right, ahead of environment. It's a kind of a dirty kind of economic development. But again, right, economic development must be sustainable, right? Must be sustainable. So again, if you take environmental road, right? Again, you need to rethink development strategy, right? China's economic growth rate might slow down, right? Might slow down. So how to combine these two seemingly conflicting goals, environmental quality and economic growth at the same time. This is another dilemma facing China. So you need to make these kinds of argument. And other things, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, you can order some of the challenges on, I don't know, I mean, maybe I think that yeah, two are essential, right? These two are essential, and other complementary issues, maybe the recent agreement between Russia and China, right? China has always been like a balancing between Russia and the United States, right? Balancing against the United States. The alliance between Russia and China, you know, the other day, May 21st, China came to a huge historic natural gas agreement with Russia, right? $400 billion natural gas, 30-year natural gas contract, right? After long absence, China has finally come to an agreement with Russia, right? So Russia is now going to provide enormous amount of natural gas, right? Not to Korea, not to Japan, but to Russia, but to China, right? So it's an ideal kind of a partnership. Russia lacking capital and manufacturing capability, right, but have resources. China lacking resources, has manufacturing capability and capital, right? Combine it against the United States. So how is that going to affect, right, China-U.S. relations, right? The global, like a balance of power, right? There must be reasons why China did that. Right, it has a huge implication for the future of China, And look at, bring in other issues of your choice. Now, India, she left. Will India rise as a great power? Again, interesting issue, but not as much studied as China, right? This is an issue that is often presented as India as a second China. Is India a second China, right? Economically, a little bit slower than China, right? It's an interesting contrast. China economically, like a economically like a rapid, like a adapter to the global economic situation, right? Rapid adapter, but politically very slowly adapting, right? But India is the other way around. India, from the very beginning, India already democracy, right? India already democracy, but economically slow. That's something that you need to look at. So very different starting point, in other words, very different starting point between China and India. And I don't know, I mean, India, there must be reasons why India is slower than China, right? You need to maybe look up some information why India is slower than China in terms of jump-starting the economy, right? China is much earlier adapter, right? Economically. What's the reason? Maybe location matter. You need to look at it. Maybe location matter, right? Location, right? And India, like a succeed. I mean, they succeeded. Maybe similar communist type of economy, right? Succeeded communist type of economy. But why there is a gap between, right, China and India in terms of jump starting the economy, right? Much slower in India. Maybe the reason India is much more active in democracy. Maybe, just hypothesis. And the prospects for the Indian economy, right? Prospects for the Indian economy. The benefits, strength of the Indian economic development strategy. You need to emphasize the strength of Indian economic development strategy. Right. What are these? They have a strong engineering programs, right? Good colleges, things like the education, human capital, those things. That's good things about it. They speak English, right? And a lot of call centers are outsourced to, right, Indian companies. That's something that Thomas Friedman emphasized in his book, right? Many of the call centers for global companies, right, are located in India, right? So how those will be leveraged for future economic development for India. And again, in terms of democracy, I mentioned India for the first time. I mean, from the very beginning, already democracy. But what are remaining problems for Indian democracy? Right, there are remaining problems: corruption. Right, it's a competitive system, competitive election, competitive, democracy. But still, there are many problems of Indian democracy. And what are these remaining problems? Right. And China is like between Russia and the United States. How about strategic environment for India? Right. Strategic environment. India's foreign relations. How is that going to affect Indian development? Right? So that's those things that you want to study and write up an essay. Right?